It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back.
We're back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. This is Barnet. I'm here with my my colleague, Freeman Michaels, the social heretic.
I love that. That's fantastic. Social heretic.
It feels like a biker name, right? It's like a bunch of guys in with leather jackets on Harleys.
The idea that it's disruptive, I guess, is okay because, we're midwifing an emerging world that's waiting to be born. And simultaneously, we're hospice workers helping with the transition, right? Letting go and helping to step into this profound mystery, the great thereafter or whatever. So I love...
It is disruptive.
It is.
It does not have to be catastrophic.
Right.
It does not have to be. It does not have to be as painful.
Right.
As it might be, but it is disruptive because it is putting the clutch in on some habituated responses and thinking and assumptions that are so fundamental to how we operate as human beings, and that is very challenging. Look, there was a time when it was widely held that the world was flat.
Yep.
And that is that was a very disruptive idea that the world might not be flat. There was a time when, not very long ago, when women were considered to be not worthy of the vote. Okay. Women to this day are still not, they're not granted a level playing field in many ways. And so we still have ways to go around that, and that will be one of the kinds of disruptive emergent paradigms that we are growing into.
Yeah, but there's one thing that we've brought up time and time again, which is, and this is, again, we talk about it in terms of the collective experience, but we look at it in terms of a mirror, so it's reflective of a part inside of us, where there's an aspect within me that's hanging on to the status quo. Right, and Paul made this point. There's the status folks, and there's the status part within me that's trying to keep this homeostasis, that's trying to keep things together. It feels very much like that sometimes, like I'm holding it together. But there's another part of me that's the dynamist, right? That's got this, hunger for something yet unborn, that understands that I give up some comfort in favor of something that has such a big offer on the other side of it. But
you don't have to give up anything.
Right. Well, no, I get that. Yes, a good point. But all I was trying to say is within my own experience, compassion for the part of me that's scared, that wants to hold it all together. I get that. But enough courage, enough heart to step into the possibility again and again and again. And it's a daily activity, right? This show is the edge of possibility. We know that our greatest future is beyond the edge of what we currently hold as true. There's something yet unknown that we've oriented towards, and we've set ourselves up in a particular way that's what we're going towards, even though part of us is going kicking and screaming.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I wanted to say that we're not demonizing within myself or in the collective folks who are scared. We understand it. We've said it's developmental. We get the part of us that doesn't want things to change, that likes the old story. And it's okay. We take care of that part. We hold it. We have compassion for it as we move forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's beautifully said. What came up for me as you were speaking that is the realization that what begins as a personal process, perhaps there's so many ways to come to it. In my case, it began with a psychological exploration that developed into a spiritual exploration and a spiritual and metaphysical and consciousness exploration, but was still, how can I fix myself?
Right.
So what begins as a personal process at some point flips into being a world process.
Yes.
It just flips all by itself, and the world becomes a hall of mirrors.
Yeah.
You know, I was driving up here this morning and thinking how gorgeous the sea looks and how beautiful that was, and realizing, God, the feeling of that, the beauty of that, well, that's me. And I felt wonderful. And then I looked over to the right and I saw the fields, and there were all these migrant laborers who are pulling all of the vegetables out of the fields. And I thought, my God, that is crushing work. And I had some assessments and beliefs and judgments that I laid on, is that right or is that wrong? And then I realized, well, and that part too, the discomfort of that is equally, just as a moment earlier, I was looking in my world and mirroring and relating to, tuning to what was so beautiful. Now I was tuning to something that was confusing to me, and around which I didn't have easy answers, and was complex, and the discomfort of that. So the world, I guess what I'm saying is I am forging a deeper, more, a closer relationship with what I am experiencing in the world, allowing it to move me more deeply. But in an aware way, and asking myself, well, what is this reflecting in me? And I'm not really clear where one thing begins and the other, one thing starts and stops. I'm not really clear which part is me and which part isn't me.
Well, and there's an important point here that we've made a number of times in the show, and I want to make it again. We talk about personalizing everything. Because, one of the propensities is to want to point out there and make it about what's happening out there, which if we can't own it as a reflection of us, we're not empowered to shift it or change it or have any impact on it. So I just want to make that point again, that as we personalize it, then we can handle and choose effectively in terms of the out there, as it were, but the trip cord is to want to make it out there, as opposed to what you're talking about, going through the experience of, wow, this is me and that's me and that's me, and that's the empowered perspective. And that's the way where we have the greatest impact on whatever we're calling out there, that we're actually really aware of our own filtering, of our own status, reorganizing around the status quo again and again and again, and how much that happens. It's my own relationship with uncertainty. It's my own intimacy with the feelings that come up, and the patterning, the patterns of perception, the patterns of behavior, the emotional patterns, the scripts I'm running with other folks and all the roles they play. To the degree I have that level of self-awareness, now I can really become a collaborator and a co-creator and a contributor in whatever collective experience I'm in favor of, whenever I want to generate and create, which is the place I think that Paul Sheely was talking about ultimately, that we're at this amazing moment in time, midwife in emerging world, at the same time caring for the broken pieces as we know they're meant to fall away because they won't serve where we're going.
So it requires some discernment. There's a tendency sometimes to want to bypass things in the name of the oneness.
Right.
And so it's all one and it's all fun and it's all great. And I have not found that has served me very well. But when I allow myself to differentiate, to split it off so that I can develop a relationship first and feel my feelings as deeply as I can and then allow them to go, then I can integrate. But to bypass you don't integrate what you don't know.
That's it.
So it's this kind of in breath out. It's in out, and honestly, I would never presume to say that this is a technique and now we have it figured out. But it's certain this has been of tremendous value to me and will be until it isn't anymore. And I will have expanded to a place of discovering something more about myself and something new.
And in that moment, you become more responsible in your own decision making and more reliable as a generator of possibilities.
So say more about that.
Well, what Paul
exactly
was talking
why.
about, Paul gave us 6 sort of benchmarks, qualities, characteristics of the process of of becoming a leader in emerging possibility, with a sense of there's something that we want to generate and create, and we're moving towards that based on these 6 fundamental keys, if you will, moving forward. So again, we both do this. We both work with the material, other people's, our own, and are worked by it, because we understand that it's always about moving back into the liminal state. And like the surfer analogy, there's a number of skills. You got to be able to hop up on the board. You got to be able to paddle out. You got to have enough wisdom and knowledge to be able to navigate whatever variables.
And
so
there's
that you
a
can
point at
get
which
there.
you got to know when to let the dream stealer lift what is no longer an appropriate story that you're holding about yourself. So I
love that.
I know,
the dream
folks.
stealer.
I'm not casting aspersions here, but there's this old joke about Woody Allen. I don't know whether he's still in therapy. But there was a time when he was in therapy. When it was widely known that he was in therapy like 3 or 4 or 5 times a week for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so there's certainly enormous value there, and at some point there is diminishing value there.
Right.
And at some point you are pumping the same septic system.
You're feeding the neurosis.
There comes a point, likewise, in differentiating and understanding the territory of what we have called on the show "those in the boss" and the fractured self and the fragments. And there's lots of names for it. Of identifying them and their motives and what drives them and what's formed them, and processing behaviors, and then eventually there comes the point when we realize, well, let's move beyond processing. I have enough. I know how to ride this bicycle sufficiently that I can kick off the training wheels and rise to the next challenge, which is, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I do create it all,
Yep.
Which is a mantra of this program, is that we create it all 100%, no caveats, no pushbacks, no qualifications. And when we begun to become closer and closer to embracing the truth of that, what becomes apparent is I don't create it all. But there's only an objective reality that is beyond, inside the world of logic and reason. I create it 100%. And until I can begin to breathe the air and swim in the waters beyond logic and reason, I do create it all. And beyond that, there is some sort of objective mysticism.
Yeah.
That's where the realm of the mystics lie. The mystery is this side. The other side of logic and reason is the realm of mysticism, and that I don't create it all. I understand that I'm a co-creator there, but that's not first-hand knowledge.
Yep. And knowing that is helpful as well. That there's a place beyond, beyond where I'm owning it all to where I don't.
And we don't. What did you used to call it? Premature
Transcendence syndrome.
We don't jump.
No, we can't. Well, we do sometimes, and we track back. We go, wow, I was skipping a step there. I mean, look, every time I feel like I've got it, there's this, collapsing moment where I'm like, okay, maybe I don't, but I've got so one of the things you and I have said in our personal lives is those moments where whatever the status gets rocked again, and we're feeling like, we're really in the discomfort of, moving back into liminal, that there's, having been through it, just like having given birth, we know this moment. We know this moment in the process, right? We know that in a moment here, it'll pop through and there'll be this thing that's been born. In the analogy, it would be a baby, but in the case of whatever we're generating, creating, we know that there's some, there's contractions and there's pushing and there's all kinds of things, and then we're popped through. But having done that a number of times, it's okay. And what if I go back to the whole meeting with the status quo, the reorganizing back to a status quo, reorganizing it back to the status quo within myself, and then I see it reflected in all the other folks, and I'm intimate with the part of me that's scared, that wants to do that, and I understand it, and I go, oh, yeah, okay. It's not as dramatic. And the fact that there's always this moment, or at least there has been for me, these reoccurring moments before birth of chaos and discomfort and everything's changing. I'm transforming. What Paul was talking about the embracing of the transforming, that's the big gig, that we actually recognize that the transformation is the bigger game, you know?
Well, our producer has walked out of the studio, so we have no idea what time it is, but I suspect that we need to get the heck out of here.
Yeah, we're going to do that. So we're going to call this a show. We're grateful that you came and spent the time with us. We invite you to keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.